Hi guys, welcome to another conversation with Steffani Murphy and Rozella Ehrler over in Spokane, Deer Park area, north of Spokane, Washington. Hi ladies, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. You are the dynamic duo in my mind. I want you to know that. You guys are just awesome to chat with.
Yes,
And
that's what we want to be.
by the way, just for full transparency, they're also awesome to deal with on real estate. There's a lot of knowledge between the both of them guys. So if you're interested in buying a house in the Spokane area, Spokane County, even that greater area there, Steffani and Rozella are two ladies you should absolutely talk to. Okay. So that's my endorsement for them. But
Thank
today, ladies, I wanted to ask you more about the NAR verdict on the lawsuit here that just came down on the side of the plaintiffs here against the NAR and commissions, and get your take on that. What's going on there and how do you feel about that?
Well, deep breath. Yeah. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, basically who oversee all of us realtors in the United States. In the state of Missouri is where this one was. Where it started at, is siding with buyers and sellers, necessarily saying that prices were changed and realtors drove up prices basically to compensate for our commission. And so the transparency on how we are now getting paid is changing. And so that dynamic on how realtors are getting paid commission-wise is what the premise of it is.
And they issued a verdict with a $1.78 billion damage award against NAR. Right. So not insignificant. Now, to be clear here, the National Association of Realtors is going to appeal this verdict. So this isn't done yet, guys, but you know, it's a start of something.
No, it's an open pending litigation now, as we, are going to just sit here and wait. Because I've been in the industry, both from real estate side, lending side, also from a banking side. My thought process is kind of like, man, I wish we would have just settled.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Because I know how these things can go and take, and I just think it's opening up a can of worms that we did not need to open up even further. But I also think that it does highlight the area within this business that needed some correction, because it obviously did need some. But I think that under the guise that it's the real estate industry or real estate, agents portion, I guess, and the pricing's being driven up, I think that is just a far-fetching reach. It's frustrating, honestly, because in most situations, it's not a fixed rate that you do get, and we know that. And I just feel like the representation, honestly, that we had from the NAR probably could have been a little bit better. That's my opinion.
Well, it was a jury of your peers that made the verdict there. So that is kind of composed of home buyers and home sellers. And it would tell me that at least they don't fully understand the compensation system that real estate agents are paid through. Is that correct from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, at least, I heard something about this yesterday and it kind of like struck my brain. Is right now, like, it's a bigger opportunity for us as realtors to educate everybody on how exactly we are paid and what happens to that commission when we get it and who we have to pay, who gets the money and where it goes. That way everyone really knows what a realtor does. And I think it just comes down to like properly educating and being fully open. Transparency, with the general public.
Tell me what value the real estate agent brings to both sides, the listing side of the equation and the buyer side of the equation. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Do you want listing or buyer? We could go on all day, but
I'm going to go with the side of the seller, because that's essentially where this is stemming from, because that's where commission essentially comes from as it sits right now. Basically, when a listing agent goes out on an appointment and they're being interviewed for their position, which most sellers don't even realize that they should be interviewing agents. So with that interview, there should be a discussion about compensation. And when they have that discussion, really that's like when it's supposed to be had, the conversation. And so if agents are not basically explaining it in a proper manner, then there's not gonna be an understanding and there's gonna be confusion. And so just my best way of practice, and again, I don't know if it, like, we were just fortunate to have been taught this out of the gate, but it was always is, and already, is in place to be having this consultation where it's simply stating, to my clients who's listing, well, part of your fee is to pay me for my job. And because I understand and have the ability to market it in such a manner, I'm willing to say that I'm going to give half of what you're agreeing to pay me. Whatever we negotiate, I give half to the other cooperating broker. And if I, in fact, end up bringing you the buyer in addition, and I go under dual agency, at that point, I have the ability to pass it off to my partner, or I can still represent you. And if I do, then I will oftentimes give you some sort of a discount on the rate, because I understand now I've, doing both. But if I do, it's more so just like a thank you for allowing me, I guess, to still have full control of the contract, but in a reduced manner. So it all just goes back to the consultation of the agent. And I just think that there's so many agents that unfortunately get into this business and don't treat it as such. And that's how partially we've landed where we are too, is because the agents themselves are not educating buyers and sellers in a proper manner. Because when you do that, most oftentimes sellers understand, well, of course I'm going to be willing to pay somebody else to bring me a buyer. Like,
well, we have to do better about explaining our value too. Like,
Yeah.
We're not just putting your home on the internet, like on Zillow and Realtor. That's not all that we do. There's a lot more behind the scenes, like just the contracts alone, the legality, and learning and understanding how to properly write a contract. That way your seller is protected. That way, if something did happen with the buyer, they are going to have that reassurance that we have done our job and we're there to protect them and keep their home safe and their assets safe, and everything within that home and property. So when you do like for sale by owner, which is becoming more popular, we're definitely going to start seeing a lot more of turbulence in the market with just people trying to do it without us and navigate that, because there is a lot more behind the scenes than people would realize just on the legal aspect. That's not even including showing the home, making sure the home's ready for the market. That has nothing to do with even the physical parts of the job for a seller.
Got it. And given that this potentially is the biggest transaction in many people's lives, I think your points are really valid there. They need to be represented well, no doubt about it.
Right.
Okay, so moving forward, can you give us your assessment, maybe short term, next few months, and long term? What is your expectation if this plays through, what's going to happen in the real estate industry? Any ideas there?
Well, so one thing that somebody said yesterday, like I mentioned earlier, what they had said to me was, he was like, I've been in the industry for over 15 years, and nowhere in that 15-year time has our market stayed the same, or our jobs. Our jobs are constantly adapting and changing. He said, so if you are in the real estate business for the right reasons, you're going to learn to adapt. You're going to learn how to understand the new rules, and you're going to learn how to implement them. And if you learn those, then you're going to benefit from them because you have an understanding of them, and then you can grow. So I think right now what's important is just to really understand it and learn how we can implement it in a healthy way so that it does benefit us and our buyers and sellers and the market.
Very good.
Look at this as one more thing that it's kind of like they're just shining the spotlight on an area within our industry that they're like, we're hyperly focusing on this, do better here. So in my opinion, it's just kind of like I said, if you're already operating on a really good moral, ethically, like,
You'll be fine.
running, operating business, you should already be doing this in your best practice anyways, because transparency is how you end up with loyalty from your clients. People like honesty. Honesty gives them knowledge, which gives them power to make decisions going forward.
Okay. Right. And do you see this verdict lending credibility to the online model for real estate agents more than face-to-face? Just what's your comments on that, please?
No, because,
Go ahead.
Well, so one thing right now that is, it's basically saying like sellers aren't necessarily wanting to pay the commission for a buyer's agent anymore. They're saying,
right,
we're going to pay for our agent. We're not paying for the buyer's agent. So when there's no longer funds to be paying for that agent, it brings, if you're going online, like your question about online presence, if no one is going to be paying for that buyer's agent, a buyer is not going to go online and be able to find all of the services that they're going to need, be able to write a contract on their behalf and buy a home on their behalf. They are going to have to find a physical human to be able to go through and do this, in my understanding.
Well, but I think that there's going to be platforms that are going to roll out to where they're going to try to make it essentially virtual, like
Oh, yeah.
whatever it is.
To where they do it all online, like contact
Yeah.
everything.
Like a contact list type thing. So a virtual purchase. But what I really think that it's going to fail, because again, people are going to find themselves buying things more blindly. And when they realize, once they get into things like, where was their protection? Where was the representation? Where was the information? That's what people want, especially like you said, with one of the largest purchases that they're going to make. I don't think that realistically you can somehow force maneuver humanity to disconnect from something that's going to make them feel comfortable and confident. That's already proven, like, that does not come from virtual. Like, I could go down a rabbit hole on how that I don't think is going to.
Realtors are more than just a home. We are like,
We just said it yesterday. It is not for the faint
Therapist.
at heart.
yeah, we're therapists in times. We are, I mean, all kinds of things, just because it is the biggest transaction and it's a very emotional transaction. And that's when people show their biggest colors, whether they're good colors or bad colors. And the internet can't replace that, like, cannot replace that human touch, you know, or
Good point.
word or whatever it may be. You can buy something online, but is it going to last forever? Probably not, just because of that humanity there, I guess. Hopefully, we're hopeful.
And one more question for you. Do you see commission structures, the payout amounts that both the buyer and seller are paying, there's going to be more negotiation in the future? And does that mean that there will be lower commissions in the future for agents?
Yeah, so I think for our industry in Spokane, January 1st, we're already implementing our new buyers agreements. Those are going to be revised and changed, or they already are. They're just starting this year.
But then they're revised again and have to be rolled out in January.
So we will be fully having to negotiate our buyers commission and how we are going to be paid from our buyers completely. And so that's already kind of been a thing, but we have not been required to submit that to be paid out. Our brokerages will no longer be able to pay us without this disclosure from our buyers being fully written out and discussed prior to a contract being written. So our coworker actually noticed yesterday, listing agents are already not paying buyer's agents, or like a $500 credit towards buyer's agents. So it's already becoming a thing where sellers are saying, we're not paying that, we don't have to. And it just goes back to understanding and fully educating your seller. If you're not going to pay this, what are the outcomes and the consequences of it?
Yeah, like, are you not going to attract agents to show the home? Is that a consequence of that?
Right.
But there's a lot of agencies that have built their business based off of like the 1% listing, but we all know that that's not truly what is being charged. So again, it goes back.
They're still paying their buyer's agent the 3%.
Yeah, but the main change I think that we're going to see contractually that's going to happen, but then also how that's going to come to fruition, I'm not entirely sure. But as of January 1, when we have to start using these forms, the only way to actually be getting paid for representing a buyer is to have that pre-negotiated before you even write an offer. Because as long as the buyer is instructing us as their hired agent to go negotiate on our behalf, whatever agreed commission they have agreed to pay us, then we are allowed to go and negotiate that with part of our offer. But what was interesting and what was said yesterday that tripped my brain was that essentially they're then going to try to convert that to come from seller paid concessions out from lender. And I don't believe we're going to really be able to have much wiggle room to do that with rates being where they're at right now. So again, I think it's just going to go down to heavy, super negotiations, which actually require conversations between agents. And that's where, again, it's going to boil back down to who's been in this business for a long time and who hasn't, and who has the patience to withhold and go through. And I already am seeing there's agents that have been in the business for a long time. They won't even pick up their phone and negotiate with you. And it's the most aggravating and frustrating thing ever. But I don't know how, like, on a model, you know, that doesn't have the phone conversations, I don't think that you're going to make it very far or very well in this type of a market. And that,
so what I hear you
we
saying,
heard heavily.
Stephanie, is this is going to perhaps purge some agents who shouldn't be in the business anyway out of the business with some
I
compression
mean,
in
but
margins.
sometimes it's just been agents that have been in it for a really long time, and it's going to have to be going back to a, you know, more traditional type of business, but then also fully submerged into what new business is like too. Like it's a mold of everything, and it's nothing like we've ever done business before. That's the one general consensus I keep hearing is like, we're going into something that we haven't really seen before. Obviously, like we can look back at history and see what trends are kind of there, but we just came off of anomaly years. And why would we think that that's all of a sudden now going to go back to what history's been doing? Right. I think we're rewriting history in the making, honestly.
Okay. All right. Any closing comments? And it can be anything else, the market, how things are going, any other thoughts?
How did you guys on the lending side see any backlash because of the NAR stuff at all, or not really?
Well, that's a really good question, Rozella. We've already been through it. The lending side of things went through this type of action years ago, and it was good for the industry overall. Mortgage brokers used to get way more compensation on loans than they are now. In retrospect, I think it's been healthy for the consumer that we went through this, and the good ones survived and some of the bad ones left, and it cleaned up the industry a little bit. And I think overall it was very healthy. And I suspect the same is going to happen for real estate agents here. You guys aren't going to be out of a job tomorrow or even long term. If you do a good job and you offer value like you're talking about, I think you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good to hear.
I would definitely say I think that the market's still moving. That's definitely what we saw also yesterday with,
Okay.
you know, numbers trending like, and what really my biggest notice is holy cow, buyers. Like, I know it's really hard to choke down the interest rate right now, but do you have some serious negotiation that you can do? Because we had about what, $150,000 swing from list price to sold price.
Yeah.
Wow.
The difference between the difference between pending homes right now and the sold homes versus like what they were actually listed at, it was around 150 grand difference in the medians. And that just goes to show that even though they're listing high, these people are not selling high.
No. And appraisers are
prices,
also, you know, they're coming in low. In fact, I just had one of my closers tell me that was a lovely little appraiser that I had assigned to me once. But he did the same thing, and he pulled a Tidewater on new construction even.
That's crazy.
That's not very common.
No, but so prices are mellowing out and becoming a little more healthy.
Prices are becoming healthy, and negotiations, in my opinion, like, oh man, put me back in, coach. This is my game.
Yeah, given rates where they're at, something has to give here for buyers to get into homes, and you know, housing prices is certainly the one thing that can change. Exactly, people can, sellers can,
and sellers are motivated still. Like, that's the funny thing; they're super motivated, and they're getting very creative.
That's because anyone who's selling right now isn't selling because they want the equity. Anyone who's selling right now tends to be people who, like, life is happening and they have to sell. Like, they're moving, or families are, you know, adapting or changing, or retirement, elders are moving in with young children, that kind of thing. So sellers are having to adapt a little bit for sure.
Yep. And as a buyer, keep in mind, guys, we still have loan options that can help you keep the payment lower for the first few years. 3-2-1 buy down, which I think we've talked about before. There's also a loan called a graduated payment mortgage. Works a little differently than the 3-2-1 buy down, but the effect is the same. You get lower payments the first few years of the loan, so that can help as well. And rates are predicted to be down probably 2 years from now, and people will likely be refinancing at that time into a lower rate anyway, so it can work out really well.
Perfect.
Agreed.
Perfect.
consult with
Steffani,
us.
Rozella, always a pleasure to chat with you too. You bring an energy
Thank
and
you.
vibrance and youth and wisdom all at the same time. You gotta like that combination, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today, ladies. Appreciate it so much.
Yes,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.